Welcome to the Write Your Own Story podcast. I'm your host, Betsy Leonidas, and the founder of the Write Your Own Story company. Girl, I can tell you right now, you are definitely enough. Here we value service, sisterhood, connection, laughter, and that super genuine, keep it real, tell you like it is honesty. My hope is at the end of each episode, you realize you can do whatever it is you dream about and that you are not alone with what you struggle with. I'm hoping that you are snapping and clapping and hell yes in your way through each one of these episodes. So if this tracks with you, let's get started. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the latest episode of the Write Your Own Story podcast. This one is gearing up to be absolutely fascinating. I am here with Sarah Edmondson, who is a survivor of a cult and found herself surprisingly in one, and how she escaped and the signs to look out for it. I have listened to her TED Talk. I've read through all of her material, and her story is absolutely fascinating. It's not like the giant one, that we've all heard about, although yours has been made into a documentary. You've written 2 books, you have a podcast. Like, this is the real deal. But I think this is an excellent story for women, one, because it's fascinating, but 2, the psychology behind it, which I know you're so passionate about sharing. So my hope is for women, and I know your hope is this as well, for women who are like seeking community, to be able to have the tools and resources to be able to spot what might be sort of cautious scenarios that, like, you'd be, I love in your TED Talk, and we'll get into it, how you describe some of the like cult-like things in our community that just kind of put a little bit more red flags on our checklist, which I think is incredible. I think this not only applies to cults, but like we were talking about off camera, this applies to relationships, this applies to family, this applies to community. So this is going to be an incredible conversation. Sarah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is one of my favorite things to do, is to talk to people who I feel I relate to, because I understand their journey, and in listening to some of your library, your podcast library, which is great, by the way, and super helpful for me, just in my own female journey, is that's me. I'm this kind of person who wants to listen to a podcast that can help me with my marriage or help me understand my relationship with my body or whatever. Yeah. And I think the term that I use is seeker. So I've always been a seeker. I've always wanted to learn and grow. Not everybody feels that way. There are people out there who are like, this is just who I am and you can't change me. They're not going to listen to your podcast, and that's fine, that's totally right? Like, that's their journey. Yep. But if people are going to listen to this podcast, I will hopefully be able to share something that they'll put into their pocket as they traverse through life, and hopefully will help them down the road. That's
undoubtedly. I love that how you use the term seeker. I also identify as a seeker. I'm insatiably curious, and I love learning. And I also love working on myself. I feel like we're all ever evolving. Can you just kind of kick us off telling us about tell us about your story. Tell us about you as a seeker and how you found yourself here.
Sure. I'm going to give the cliff notes because it's long. If people want to hear, want to read or hear on Audible my full journey in and out of NXIVM, that's in my first book. That's in my memoir, Scarred. So I'm just going to put that there. Yes. But the cliff notes of it, I would say, in terms of things that are important to understand, sort of my psychology and my, what we call in the cult space, situational vulnerabilities. Oof. In other words, what are the things that were going on in my life that made me vulnerable? Said I was a cassette seeker. I was very open, which I think is a great thing, but also was to my detriment. I was very much wanting to understand myself, the world, how to be more successful. I was an actor. I was inspiring. I mean, I technically was a working actor, but I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I was feeling like there's more to life than beer commercials, vampire TV shows. I want to make a difference. My parents were both very politically, socially active growing up, sort of former left-wing hippie activists. And I've always believed that, you should have an impact and leave the world better. And I wasn't really sure what that was. And acting definitely was not giving me that, but filling that cup.
Yeah.
Around that time, I was in a relationship that I thought was going to be my husband. It turned out, spoiler alert, was not. But I was like, this is not working. We're not communicating. I'm not happy. And then at that time, he was a filmmaker. He made a film that got into a film festival where I met a director who'd made this movie called What the Bleep Do We Know, which at the time, and this is the early 2000s, was like groundbreaking.
Oh, wow.
It was sort of like spiritual, create your own reality, look at your wiring, your program, how to manifest. It's like before The Secret. But yeah. And just as a caveat, I don't necessarily believe in all those things now, but at the time it was like what set me up for success with being open to, I was really into setting intentions. I'd read books like Celestine Prophecy and Artist Way by Julia Cameron. So these are things that like made me believe like the universe is vast, and it's like my woo woo side, which I still have and love.
Yeah. I
It
am
just
also woo
the
woo. Totally.
yeah, totally right. So but there's some things to be aware of when you have that tendency of like how you could be taken advantage of, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But one of the things is that when I met Mark Vicente from What the Bleep Do We Know, I was like, oh, I went to this film festival being like, I'm going to figure out my purpose, and I'm going to meet all these like-minded spiritual filmmakers. It was called the Spiritual Cinema Circle Festival at Sea. It was a cruise. And so I was like, oh, well, I met him. And so this is like the universe planting him in my lap. So when he invited me to take a workshop, I was like, sure, because it felt very like in flow and on purpose, which again, I do
Totally.
think exists, but also like when we're in that state, we tend to ignore some red flags. And some of the red flags I missed were this, and I'm going to weave in these in through my story so that your audience can like make note. But like there was this real pressure, not from him, but from somebody else to like sign up right away, because if I didn't, I'd miss out. And this was like the opportunity to change my life. That's a red flag. Real personal development groups give you lots of time to think and research. So that's one thing.
Love
then
that.
Yes. So then I end up going to this program, which happened to be doing a one-off, the first one in Canada. Just a few weeks later, I thought, divine timing. Here it is, coming to my hometown in Canada. It was based in New York. So I was like, how amazing. And I had many, many red flags on that very first training. But I'm going to break all that down. I just want to give the audience like an overarching sort of cliff notes of the story, which is that I went in like kind of reluctantly and judgy. And by the end of that first 5 day, I was sold. I was like a fanatic. I thought this is the best thing ever. I wanted to tell all my friends and family about it. And I did. Spent years traveling between Albany and Seattle, trying to like train to be a coach, eventually opened my own center in Vancouver, Canada, which took many years and was incredibly frustrating because they kept moving the goalposts of what I needed to do to achieve that level of rank. NXIVM was built on a martial arts system of growth, and they kept moving the post, which is another red flag. Anyway, there was a time in the middle where things were great. And I think this is another important thing for your audience is that people don't join a cult on purpose. They join something that's really wonderful. And what was wonderful about NXIVM was it was community, it was purpose, it was meaning, it was helping people. My parents are therapists, and before I chose acting, it was either going to be like, do I pursue acting or do I become a therapist so I can help people? And now it's like, I get to do it all. I can still pursue acting. I can do this coaching. I can help people. I'm being helped. It's very fulfilling.
Yeah, totally.
So great. Yeah. And I was like, started to make a living off of it. And that was great. And because I have a network and I'm very outgoing and sociable, and I'm kind of a natural recruiter, like, whether it's a green juice or the new yoga studio, I just tell people about what it is that I like. And that was, harnessed by the group.
Yeah.
So, and I can go into more details of my time there, but I think what's important for people to know is that it was really wonderful. It was my whole life. It was also very glamorous. I flew on a private jet. I got to be in a small, intimate setting with, world leaders, A-list actors. It was really fun and exciting at a point. And then it was not. And there were many things along the way that I now can see were red flags. I just couldn't see them because I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't have the education that I have now. Lots of weird things happen. I can get into those more details if you want. But at the end, there were too many things to ignore. My husband and I and a group of others became whistleblowers because we realized that behind closed doors, behind this facade of personal and professional development, was the leader, who we'd been told was celibate, by the way, another big red flag.
Yeah.
But actually had a harem of women, many of whom were my friends, who had been keeping this from me. So he had these spiritual wives, not dissimilar to pretty much every other cult leader in history, male cult leader in history.
Just picking my jaw off the floor. Sorry. Keep going.
Among other things. And basically he was using executive success programs, which is the coaching program that I was a facilitator in, as a funnel for him to basically get a fresh supply of women and money. He was exploiting people and, taking what he needed, which was basically, enough. He didn't necessarily need like a ton of money. He wasn't living an incredibly lavish lifestyle. In fact, he was presenting to be sort of a modest renunciate. Like, I don't need material things. I don't need sex. I don't need fancy cars. But he took a lot of money because he was also in lawsuits extensively with anyone who was trying to expose what he was doing, which of course we thought we were just being attacked.
Yeah.
Which is another red flag when it's like, oh, we have these enemies, which is us versus them thinking. And I can get into that also. Cut to, we whistleblow. I don't know how much you want me to go into, like the getting branded or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. So hold
Yeah.
on. But I
Yeah.
have so many questions already. Okay. So I'm trying to decipher, is this feeling like a corporate company, or is this feeling like a coaching pyramid type thing? When you say like the martial arts systems, like, are you salaried, an employee? Are you building a coaching practice and he taking a cut? Like, I'm just curious, like, how is this structured?
The structure was at the time, people would say this seems like, a pyramid or like an MLM. And we say that's not an MLM, because MLMs are unethical and we are created by the most noble, ethical man in the world. Therefore, we are not a pyramid scheme, which doesn't actually make any sense. But yeah, it was structured in that way that you came in, you became a coach. One would become a coach if they met certain requirements. But to become a coach, you also have to bring two people in. And then to go to the next level, they had to bring people in. So you were growing what was called your organization. And once you hit certain benchmarks, you could get paid to facilitate, to do certain things. So most people never hit that level. So there was like, close to 20,000 people went through, which is actually not a lot when you look at like Scientology or,
totally.
other groups. It's actually pretty small. That's 20,000 over 20 years. So it's not a lot of people. But at any given time,
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of people, but it's not like, compared to the world, but at any given time, like when we had our corporate retreats, to which I went to 12 of my 12 years there, every year, I never missed in upstate New York.
And are you paying to be there?
Yes. Oh yeah. Paying to be there. So, but any one of those would be like 300 to 400 people. So I'd say at any given time, there was around 300 to 400 people, maybe 1,000 internationally, of people who are like, I'm a member of this program. And in that program, there were coaches that you just certify, and you were an apprentice coach. So you wear a white sash when you're a student, and then you apply for coach, you wear a yellow sash.
Oh my gosh.
Just like martial arts. I know.
Yeah. It also feels like,
like an MLM.
Yes, totally. Where like people wear certain colors when they sell an X amount of beauty product. I'm not here to call anybody out, but like, oh my God.
Oh, I will call it out. I'm just, if anyone's listening to this, who's like, you can cut this if you want, who's like, well, I'm in an MLM and it's ethical and blah, blah, blah. Because I know that there are women listening who are part of an MLM, and I get it. I was in one before I was in NXIVM that sold vitamins. That's probably why I was such a good seller. I'd already learned a lot of the sales tools. Yeah. So when it came to recruiting and selling people in NXIVM, I didn't mention that in my story. I became a recruiter. I was one of the top recruiters in the company. We called it enroller. I was not a recruiter. I was enrolling people into team humanity. Like, this is the changing of the language. Red flag.
Yeah.
Okay? I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. So people who are feeling sensitive to me talking like this, and they think that their organization is a good one or a healthy one.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. You can do whatever you want with your life. Obviously, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I would just ask you to like maybe question some of the things that I'm talking about today and see if it applies to you. And if you're not sure, there's people who've written books specifically about MLMs and why they are in this space known as commercial cults. They're not cult-like. They're not similar to a cult. They are commercial cults because it's the same structure. It's the same thing. It's a pyramid. The only people who make money in a pyramid scheme or in an MLM or direct sales or whatever you want to call it are the people who started. There's only people. It's set up so that there's all these people at the bottom who are scrambling to try to get to the next level. They will never make that kind of money. It's not possible.
Yeah, especially to that scale. That's so interesting. So then I've never heard of like, in order to get more certified, you need to bring more people into the fold, and that there's really truly only one person at the top. That's pretty wild.
Yeah. Just to finish that thought in my head, let's close the bookmark. So white was student, yellow was coach. You had to bring two people in, you had to take a test, and then you were coaching, and then you didn't get to proctor, which is orange, until you had, I think it was 17 people total in your, what's called your organization, or now I would say pyramid, but we called it organization. Yeah. So you'd have your two people, bring in people. And like, you had to basically, what they were trying to teach you was basic. They said that it was like getting a practical MBA, and that you are working with a group, right? And you're growing them and helping raise them up, and you have to coach them. And the only way that you can grow is learn how to grow them. And if people didn't get their next sash, It's because they weren't really doing the work, which is the gaslighting that starts to happen. But really, just like all MLMs, it was designed so that only a few people would succeed. I was successful in this program, and I'm not saying this to pump my tires like I'm so successful. I just happen to have the personality type to be that person. Just like in every MLM, there's the person who gets up on stage and they're the diamond director and they have the home in Hawaii and they have it all. And people are like, oh, I want to be like that. And if they don't, if you aren't like that, then it's like, well, you're just not doing the work. You're just not committed enough, or you're like, not, you're too lazy or whatever it is. It's always put back on the person versus like maybe the structure is actually set up to fail and just dangle hope. So you think that you could get there and you're just struggling to always get there and you never will.
Okay. So why do people why is it so hard for people to make money? When I think about MLM models, and I don't know, we're selling Tupperware, right? That's like the OG or knives or whatever of the MLMs. And like, I know you have to do a heavy investment to get in. And then they pitch it as like you are, and not to pick on MLMs, cults in general, or even in the one that you were in. Why could people not make money?
It's just set up that way. There's always what's called a compensation plan, or a plan. Everyone has a different name for it, but like Amway, the original, the OG gangster of the MLM world, is literally set up so that, well, first of all, they inflate the cost of the products, and then they tell you that you're getting like the direct. You think you're getting a wholesale price. Let's say toothpaste, which is what normally like less than $2 at the store. You're spending like $8 to $10 on toothpaste because it's the best toothpaste ever, but you're still getting a wholesale price. And then you can sell it to your neighbor for $14. First of all, no one's going to buy that.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't matter how good it is, but it's usually things like aloe and mango juice and, magical acai face cream or whatever they're selling. It's like some magical thing. You think that you're paying a good price for it, but it's already inflated by the time they get to you. So, I mean, that's just one component of it, but also just to get paid out, you have to do things that are very difficult. Like you can't get paid until you hit certain benchmarks. And to be totally honest, like I know a lot about the corruption of the NXIVM model. If you want to get really into MLMs and what's problematic, I would love to connect you with Bridget Reed, who wrote a book called Little Bosses Everywhere. And it sort of explains this whole fad of like, hashtag boss babe, be your own boss, have your own business. All MLMs are not your own business. You're not even what's the independent contract? There's all these terms, and that's also different in the States and Canada. So I don't want to get it. I'm from Canada originally. I don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah.
But if you want to really dive into why MLMs are inherently a scam, all of them, I would have Bridget Reed on because she's done the deep dive. I'm the expert in NXIVM, but I'm not an MLM expert, I would say.
Yeah. And I don't want to go, I don't want to get stuck down the MLM rabbit hole, but this is absolutely fascinating. But going back to NXIVM, you had mentioned all of a sudden, it was like, yes, there are red flags in terms of like earning potential, and you have to bring more people in, and you don't get to create your own content. You're just kind of speaking the word of NXIVM and teaching people that and making it borderline unattainable. But then things start to get scary. So not only are you realizing that he's using, he's got women lined up for sexual use, but like what other stuff is happening that you're all of a sudden it's gone from like, this feels just kind of like a weird company, like, but they're holding you up on this pedestal, which feels good to anyone. And we've all, so many of us have grown up in the corporate world where that's what you do. You get pushed on the pedestal. Often they punt your promotion. They need you to do both your job and the new person's job for a while. And then when once you prove yourself doing both roles, then you can have that role, but you're probably not going to make as much money as you thought you were. I'm obviously overgeneralizing, but when did things start to get like creepy and scary?
I mean, honestly, with the information I have now, there were things that I missed right from the beginning. Like right from the beginning. And the thing that I always, the sort of the overall structure that I think made me ignore some of those things or not inquire more is because right from the beginning, and a lot of groups do this, especially in personal development or even anything like spiritual groups or even religious settings, where right from the get-go, if you're agreeing to join something, whether it's a church, whether it's a yoga teacher training, whether it's a personal development seminar, you're saying, or a marriage counselor or anywhere, or coaching, you're saying, I know less than you. You're the authority. Teach me. You're paying someone usually to teach you something that you don't know. So there's a power differential.
Yeah.
If the person's ethical and a good person, they'll teach you and you'll pay for them, and then it's over. Right. if that person wants to exploit you or con you or get something from you or manipulate you or coerce you or brainwash you or indoctrinate you or deprogram you, whatever the word you want to use, then one of the things that they'll do, and they did this to us, is to say, hey, you're here for a success program. We're here to grow. You paid a lot of money. I paid over $2,000, right? You're going to hit up against your issues. This is true. When we hit our issues, we feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel the urge to bolt, the urge to leave, the urge to snack, smoke, flirt, all the things we do to cover those feelings. This is true. This is true in therapy, right? If you've ever done therapy, you know it's uncomfortable and you want to distract.
Right.
We ask you to stick through those feelings, get your money's worth, stay to the end. So right from the beginning, if I'm agreeing that I'm there to grow and I'm paying a person and they're the authority, and if I feel uncomfortable, I'm going to stay, that's really problematic, because I then don't know how to listen to the voice that's saying, get the fuck out from day one. Day one, I was like, this is not right here. And I couldn't figure out exactly what it was.
Yep.
But by day 3, I was hooked.
Yeah.
And I didn't know at the time that if you're open and you're sitting there and you want to get your money's worth and you're open to the possibility of change versus like, no one's talking to me, I'm not going to make eye contact or take anything in, which may have protected me, then I could have a big shift with my entire belief system. And part of that is to accept that these people became my new authority. I was letting go of my own inner autonomy, which happened slowly over those 3 days. But by day 5, I was like, this is the best thing in the world. I want everyone in the world to have this curriculum. And then set up with that, things were great at the beginning. Next time I had another red flag, I'm in Albany, because you asked like what's creepy and weird.
Yeah.
I had brought a friend in who like decided to move to Albany to be trained directly with Keith Raniere, the leader of NXIVM. And I was like, you're giving up your acting career to okay. And then I just got this hit that there was something like sexual with them. She was so much younger. You know, when you just get that feeling, you're like, are these?
Yep.
And I was like, first of all, in my opinion, he's a troll. She's this beautiful young actress. Like, that's never going to happen. And also, we weren't allowed to have relationships as coaches with the students that came in. Why would he, like, that would be the most absurd. And he's celibate. So I'm dismissing things like that throughout.
Yeah.
The whole time. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, when I look back, you know, hindsight's 2020, I can see all these things that I missed. But I would say things got really bad I was there for 12 years, in the last few years that I was there, where a couple of the women around him who had been his closest confidants, I found out later he'd been with them as sexual partners for years, but we thought it was just part of his executive board team. The older women, his age, I'm going to say older, like in their early 50s, were dying of cancer.
What?
There was there was 10 people that I knew of at the time who had cancer. Some of them survived. 2 of them died very rapidly. Yeah. So we were attending funerals. We were like just struggling to keep things going. The payments, I was working my butt off. My payments stopped coming in the way that they had been, and eventually like fizzled out because of various stupid reasons that I won't even get into. But like there were things that were happening that like in a normal company, you'd be like, what's going on? Yeah. Anyway, other silly little trivial things that were just really dumb. Like, we're a success program, but our admin office couldn't get their shit together and would like charge people's credit cards multiple times for the same thing, or send out the wrong welcome packet. Like, just things that were like embarrassing I'm the person who's setting up programs around the world, flying in trainers, booking hotels, organizing food, and like for VIP clients, you know, This is my role. And they're like triple charging someone's credit card. Like, just things that were like, why is this such a shit show for a success program? That's like, I know that's benign, but all these things are happening. I was not happy towards the end, but I was also fully committed and fully invested. Yeah. And that's one of the red flags that I like to share with people, especially if your audience is into personal growth, is that there's a lot of great things out there. Take some program, take the tools, put them in your life. Don't make the tools your life. You don't commit fully to a thing. And if you are going to, like I did, make sure that it has an endpoint and it has a fair, business structure, and that you can get paid consistently, and that there's not like Scientology or NXIVM have the bridge to total freedom, or we had this Stripe path. It was never ending. Yeah. You should never join a program that you can't actually graduate from. Wow. And Yeah. And there was a lot of people who had left who were, trying to sound the alarm or blow the whistle before us. And they had been labeled. This is another, creepy thing, is that people who had left had been labeled crazy or like women scorned because they wanted to be with Keith, but they couldn't. They were in love with him. These are like such tropes with these groups. Almost every single guest that we've had on Little Bit Culty has talked about how they were in and people left and they were shamed, that they just weren't
Yep.
ready to do the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
They'd gone crazy. Every person, any whistleblower, they said the same thing about me, that I was unhinged, I'd gone crazy.
Well, people love to
It's
say
just,
that about women, don't
oh
they? Who
yeah.
actually have a voice,
Yeah, it's so like what year are we in?
right?
I feel like I went on a tangent, and did I answer your question?
Yes, but I have more questions. So we've talked
Mhm.
about like some of the red flags and where things got
Mhm.
crazy, but like, do we know why these women were dying of cancer or getting cancer? Like, how does that link?
When I was there and I was a believer, I thought that there was something in the water.
Like
Like
literally, like there was,
yeah, like
yeah,
like a
like lead.
I know that, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I was like starting to research, and apparently there had been a spill at some point, and this is in Clifton Park in upstate New York. Maybe one of your listeners knows. So there was the toxic idea. And then as I was leaving and realizing the mind games that Keith was doing with his women, is like, you know, I know not all cancers come from emotions, but emotional stress
Yeah.
can cause cortisol. And like, I'm not a doctor. Okay. So like, I just know
Right.
that there
Right.
are links with emotions and certain diseases. And like when you just think about like their internal world being so confusing, like
Yes.
loving this man, because apparently they loved him and they wanted to be with him, but they also didn't want to share him with 12 other women. So
Yeah.
they were being gaslit constantly. Anytime someone had a problem with being in this situation, this is what I've heard. To be clear, I was not part of the harem. That was kept from me for
Yeah.
obvious reasons, I think. But when women had a problem, we did a process in ESP, in NXIVM, called exploration of meaning, which is, I'm going to bring something that I'm upset about to my coach, and they would help me sort of detangle it so that I was no longer upset about it, unhook the stimulus from the response, which is a great thing when you have a fear of conflict, or are anxious about making cold calls, or whatever, something out in the world. It's like therapy.
Yeah.
But if I don't feel comfortable with being in a, not me, if one of these women didn't feel comfortable being in a polyamorous relationship with Keith Raniere, it would be unhooked so that they were like okay with it. But basically what they were learning to do is suppress how they really feel so that
Hmm.
they could like maintain their status in the organization, or continue to get the gold stars, or continue to be with him. So I
Was
think
there
that kind of emotional thing has an effect on the body. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
100%?
Yeah.
Well, first of
Yeah.
all, I also am not even close to a doctor, but yes, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like they talk about with autoimmune disease and all sorts of
Mm-hmm.
things that like that chronic stress can cause the inflammation that then sends your body into all sorts of disease. And disease is dis-ease. Were there any men on the board? Were men in this organization?
There were men. It's definitely a very female dominated hierarchy. There were
Yeah.
some men that were brought onto the board, I think more for optics in the last round of the executive board, but
Yeah.
they weren't privy to there was like, I mean, I thought I was in the inner circle because I got to green sash, by the way. That was like a
Ooh.
high level. I was green. There was only like 12 or 13 of us. There was one blue and then two purple. The two purple sashes are the ones who died.
Oh,
And then there was Keith, and I know. And they were, I think they were good women before they were roped into his plan. And one of them in particular, Pam Kafritz, was really like the Ghislaine Maxwell of the situation. She went out as Keith's flying monkey and like brought women to him. But you asked me something earlier about,
just so,
so just about the women. I have a theory now, and this has not been proven, and I don't know why the FBI didn't go down this route. Maybe it was too hard to prove. But I have heard from one of the women who was with Keith in his harem, who got out before all shit hit the fan. When I went to her to tell her what had happened, she said that he said, so this is like, she said, he is very
yeah,
far down
totally.
the line. So bear with me, but she was upset that all these people were dying, and he said that he thought that they were being poisoned, and that it wouldn't be hard to poison their water source. So one thing that we know about sociopaths is that they love to talk about what they're doing, so you never suspect them of doing it,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
I strongly believe that that's a very high possibility, that he was trying to get rid of the older women to make room for the new batch. This woman who told me about it was one of the younger women. So it was like, let's get rid of the old women who didn't want a bunch of new women coming in and taking their spots at the table, as it were. So
Oh
I
my
think
God.
that's what was happening, but we can't prove that at this point.
And cults in general, like that's one of the sort of things that we hear about is like, that's where drinking the Kool-Aid comes from, right? Is that they poison people.
Well, drinking the Kool-Aid comes from, that's obviously a very famous colloquialism that
Yes.
comes from Jim Jones and the People's Temple. And what happened there is that when they were finally, people were coming to see what was going on, they'd heard claims. Instead of freeing them, he convinced 900 people to drink poisoned Flavor Aid. But what people don't know is that means that we don't know exactly how many people, but many people didn't want to, but they had armed gunmen at the door. So it was either you get shot or drink the Kool-Aid or the Flavor Aid. So it has a little bit of a rich history because it's a misnomer, because people use that term of like, I drank the Kool-Aid. Like, in other words, I was on board. And I've even used that for NXIVM because people understand what that means.
Sure.
But it's a good, interesting historical point that even the people who drank the Kool-Aid in that situation didn't necessarily want to. It was what they call in this space a bounded choice. It's kind of like, it might look like a choice, but if you think that leaving means you're going to die, it's not really a choice.
Right. Without a doubt. I have to tell you, I'm literally obsessed with my Oura Ring 4. Honestly, my Apple Watch was way too much noise for me. Stand up, sit down, you have a meeting, you're late, your steps are low, breathe, all the things. But this little ring has been an absolute game changer. It doesn't just track my sleep, it helps me actually rest better. Every morning, I get insights into my recovery, my readiness for the day, and whether my body needs more downtime. It even tracks my steps, my cycle, and literally so much more. If you're someone who loves data, cares about your health, and also loves cute jewelry, this ring is for you. This is a gentle reminder, backed by science, that rest is just as important as hustle. Unlock this powerful tool for better sleep, less stress, and smarter recovery with Oura Ring 4. Use my link in the show notes to get 10% off your Oura Ring today. Yeah. Okay, can we talk about the crazy branding that happened?
Sure.
I mean, yeah. And was that really your tipping point?
Yeah. And I'll just preface this section of the story that even 8 years later, if I go into great detail about it, I can get a little triggered still. So I'm going to be kind of surface with it.
Are you sure you're okay to talk about it? We certainly don't have to.
Well, I'm going to say it I'm not going to go deep with it is what I've learned to do if people want to know the details, it's in Scarred and it's broken down in disgusting, gory detail. But I think what's important for people to know is that there were so many things that led up to it.
Okay.
Which was one of the downsides of being public, because all people know if they're just reading a headline is like, what, you got branded? Like, how'd you let that happen? Versus understanding this was after 12 years of indoctrination and programming and many things that set me up for being even open or even being in a situation where I would say to somebody, this is what's on the back of the book, Master, would you brand me? It would be an honor.
This conversation with Sarah Edmondson was so powerful, we had to split it into 2 parts. In part 1, we uncovered the subtle signs that leave us vulnerable to emotional abuse, unsafe relationships, and even cults. And in part 2, you'll hear the breaking point that woke Sarah up, how she escaped, and what it took to become a whistleblower. Don't miss it, coming up in the next episode of the Write Your Own Story podcast.